Good evening, viewers. You're watching To The Point. I'm Preeti Choudhry. As we are transfixed with what is happening in Israel and Gaza, there is a story that is unfolding in India's top court, where it comes down to abortion and rights of women over their own body. It's made an entire debate rage on pro-life versus pro-choice. So what really is going down, especially in a country, and one has to say in a country that is the most progressive when it comes down to abortion laws. There is one case which has split not just the entire country but India's top court. In court for the last 2 weeks alone, a plea of a 26-week pregnant woman. When she came in, she was just 24 weeks pregnant and 1 day. Just 1 day more on what is the permissible limit. A two-bench court heard it and heard her case. They allowed her to abort. However, AIMS, the medical unit at the behest of the center, came back with the plea that the fetus she was carrying was viable. Then there was a split verdict where the court was concerned, which is the two-bench court. And then the case has now gone to a larger bench where the Supreme Court comes into question. This is the story.
The big pro-life versus pro-choice debate. Why India and its top court are split. A case that is India and the Supreme Court divided. A three-judge bench of the Supreme Court in a fix whether a woman who's over 26 weeks pregnant should be allowed to abort her fetus. A bench comprising Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud, Justice J.B. Pardiwala and Manoj Misra, hearing an application filed by the central government. After, a two-judge bench delivered a split verdict in the case. The split verdict came a day after the two-judge bench had allowed the woman to medically terminate her pregnancy. Justice Chandrachud asserted that while it's cognizant of the autonomy of the mother, the court must also think of the rights of the unborn child. Who is appearing for the unborn child, the court asked, emphasizing that the fetus is living, viable. The court is hearing a petition filed by a 27-year-old married woman who demanded permission for terminating her pregnancy, claiming that she is neither physically, mentally, psychologically, or financially prepared to continue with the unwanted pregnancy. The court has now asked the All India Institute of Medical Sciences to submit a report on the fetus and the pregnant woman by 16th October. The Apex Court has asked AIMS to study if the fetus is suffering from any substantial abnormality, if the medicines that the woman is taking should have any effect on her carrying the pregnancy further. The mental and physical condition of the pregnant woman also be accounted for, and if there is an alternative medicine for postpartum psychosis. India as a country has the most progressive abortion laws. However, the case has now led to a raging debate, and the time is ticking, crucial for both the pregnant woman and the fetus. Feticide versus mother's autonomy. Abortion, my body, my rights. Top focus on To The Point this evening.
Cut across to our panelists. I want to immediately go to my colleague Nalini, who's joining us in the studio. Nalini, would you elucidate on why is it that India as a country with one of the most progressive laws when it comes down to abortion finds itself in a bind, where not just the country, the top court is also divided on which way to go in this particular case?
Well, Preeti, it's a very interesting case that's come up before the Supreme Court, essentially because just a few days back when the matter came up before a two-judge bench that comprised of two women judges, the judges themselves were not able to decide as to whether or not they should allow this 27-year-old married woman to terminate her baby or not terminate her baby. Now, the case has basically come to the top court because this woman was 24 weeks and 1 day pregnant when she realized that she was pregnant, and the MTP Act, which is the law that deals with medical termination of pregnancies in India, puts the deadline for abortion that is permissible without any extraordinary circumstances at 24 weeks. So considering that she was 1 day late, she had to approach the court to get her pregnancy terminated. And since then, the matter has been pending before the top court, which is extremely crucial to point out, because every single day that the child remains in her body is an additional day that she is going to be pregnant, which is going to make the matter even more complex. Now, both the woman as well as her husband have categorically stated that they don't want to birth the child. They already have 2 children, 2 very young children, I must say, I think 4 years old and 1 year old. And along with that, the woman is not in a mental state. She suffers from a lot of mental issues that she does, so she does not want to birth another human being, in addition to the financial crisis that the family probably already is in, is what they've told the top court. But at the same time, the Supreme Court had first actually allowed her to terminate her pregnancy. They'd even passed an order to that effect, and they had asked a medical board at AIIMS to examine her. After the AIIMS medical board examined her, they wrote back to the government and they told them that during her examination, it was found that the fetus had a viable heartbeat. So the heartbeat needed to be stopped before the termination of pregnancy could be carried out, and that's why they had written to the government. The government surprisingly came rushing back to the court saying that the fetus is viable, is the opinion of the medical board at AIIMS, which is why the earlier order should be recalled. In fact, ASG Aishwarya Bhati, who is representing the government before the top court, has gone to the extent of saying that if the mother in this case carries the baby full term, then the government will take care of the baby and eventually put it up for adoption. But at the same time, the mother will have to birth the baby, and that will obviously come with its own set of complications, including postpartum symptoms and all of the complications that come along with that. But at the same time, the parents have categorically said that they don't want to have a baby. And once the 2 women judges of the Supreme Court could not arrive on a decision, because where on one side a judge was pro-life, the other judge was pro-choice, the matter is now before the Chief Justice of India, a 3-judge bench being led by him, and they are looking into it. It's going to continue on Monday, and it remains to be seen how every day might make the matter even more complex when the court's hearing it.
Well, even more complex. So what I'm going to do is right now, Nalini, stay on with me. I want to cut across to Dr. Taruna Dua, Senior Consultant and Gynecologist. She's joining us live. Ms. Dua, I want you to give us an understanding. A 26-week pregnancy where every day matters, going ahead, if you're looking at a termination, and also vis-a-vis the mental health of this woman, where at one point she's also tried to take her own life. She's clinically depressed, she's been on medication, she also has 2 children, where she says she can barely take care of herself. Both physical and mental, what are we actually looking at?
Yeah, so a very good evening and thanks for having me here today. If we have known the background of the whole thing, we know that it's a viable pregnancy. It's about 26 weeks, right? So according to the MTP Act of India, which was initially passed of 1971, according to that, termination was always allowed till 20 weeks. And from the range of 20 to 24 weeks, if there was a very well-defined reason for termination, this could be done by taking a signature from 2 doctors, right? So initially it was even up to 20 weeks, we had to have the signature of 2 weeks, the signature of 2 doctors. But now that the MTP Act was amended in 2022, the provision has come that signature of 1 doctor is enough for termination up to 20, and in the range of 20 to 24 weeks. If there is a definite reason why we need to abort that pregnancy, the chance of MTP can be taken. And it is very right in saying that India is quite advanced as far as its MTP laws are concerned. There are a large number of countries which do not allow the MTP. Once the pregnancy has happened, whatever the situation, the child has to be born. But yes, we have to admit that India is very advanced as well as far as the MTP law is concerned.
No, but
so considering this particular case, it is 26 weeks pregnancy. So it is a way advanced pregnancy. Definitely the fetus is viable, and there is no abnormality as of the fetus as far as we are concerned.
But,
only
doctor, isn't
reason
the
that,
fetus, doctor, I have a question.
has come.
Isn't the fetus viable
Yeah.
from 8 week onwards? Because after 8 weeks, the fetus in any case has a heartbeat.
That is that it's a live fetus. Viability means once the child is born, the fetus is born, whether it has the potential of living a normal life or not. Because up to 20 weeks, definitely we used to consider, according to our old MTP Act, 20 to 24 was a gray zone. After 24 weeks, definitely the child is viable and child can be saved if supportive measures are given.
But,
So there is a difference between
right.
a live and a viable child.
Okay.
Live is that the heartbeat is there. It will be live even at 8 weeks. It will be live at 15 weeks. But once we say viability, viability means it should be able to remain alive once it has come into this world. So viability is only after 24 weeks.
Right, doctor.
And as of this case, it is about 26 weeks. So definitely if we give the supportive measures, there is a very high likelihood that the child will survive. Maybe it will have the complications of prematurity, but it is a viable pregnancy.
All right, so it's a viable pregnancy, but in all of this, what one doesn't quite think about or has thought about is what the mother or the pregnant woman in this question wants, because it's, instead of using the word mother, it's better to use a pregnant woman, because she's very clear. She's adamant that she wants the pregnancy terminated. And that is where Trisha Shetty, having right over your own body, whereas pro-choice versus pro-life debate kicks in.
See, there is a right of the mother.
Trisha, ma'am, we are speaking to Miss Shetty. Go ahead, Miss Shetty.
I want to go back to another quote of XYZ versus the state of Maharashtra, where a minor was allowed to terminate her pregnancy in the 26th week, when the courts considered her socioeconomic condition as well as the impact that the pregnancy would have on her mental health, right? So we must recognize that, yes, we're really grateful to be in a country like India where we understand the ever-evolving need for law to adapt to current socioeconomic circumstances of women. And I think, the courts here have always consistently, more often than not, done a good job when it comes to recognizing that right to liberty, which is personal liberty under Article 21 of the Constitution, protects a woman in terms of making fundamental decisions about her autonomy, about her reproductive choices. And we've seen it be reestablished time and again, then be it in 2021, where the amendment was made, as you rightfully highlighted, saying not just a mother, but any woman, right? Any woman and a partner must be protected, regardless of whether they are falling under the category of marriage institutions or not, to have right to reproductive care. Here, when the mother, when the woman and her partner are both saying, we are not medically fit, we are not financially fit to carry forward this pregnancy to term, and you're seeing an extenuating circumstance when the center is having to intervene, saying, we'll take care of your adoption, I think there is a certain level of insensitivity to not account for the mental turmoil and anguish that the woman will continue to be subject to, should she be forced to carry forward her pregnancy, right? Justice this did demand, why was there a delay of 27 weeks? But she's saying that she didn't anticipate getting pregnant right after the delivery of her second child. So I think we must paramount take into consideration who is carrying said fetus. We're talking about two people, the woman and her partner, who are currently very much alive. And if medical doctors permit a safe abortion in this case, I think we should consider that her right to choice should paramount the right of a fetus, if it is medically cleared.
I want to get Deepa Ishwar into this conversation. Deepa Ishwar, pro-life. Deepa, the fact is, let's put this in perspective. This is a woman who is mentally ill. She's suicidal. She has made it very clear that she can't take care of herself, leave alone another child. This is a woman who had no idea she was pregnant because she has a 1-year-old child who she's still nursing, so she's never got her periods over the last 1 year. So pregnancy for her was a shock. And she's made this clear umpteen number of times that she does not want the child. To then turn around and force a pregnancy on her, do you think that's fair?
Well, I think, this topic is a little sensitive for me because I myself 37 weeks carrying right now.
Congratulations, Deepa.
This baby that we're talking about is 26 weeks pregnant. 26 weeks of age. So at 26 weeks, the baby can actually, feel, if you touch around your belly, it can respond, it can hear, it's not just a heartbeat anymore. It is a living body inside a body. And here we are talking about the parent who's, you've been telling this repeatedly throughout the debate. I was listening, where the parents are adamant they don't want the child, they don't want this delivery, they don't want this pregnancy. But who's responsible for this? So I think,
But she didn't
is
know.
it the baby
No,
that's
to
responsible
blame
for
the
this?
parents, she, as per her, Deepa, she was lactating, she was breastfeeding, she did not have a menses for a full year, and she had no idea she was pregnant. It was only, and
No.
having said that, she approached the court when she found out, and she was 24 weeks, within the right, 1 day, 24 weeks and 1 day pregnant. We've dragged this case for over 2 weeks. She stands at 26 weeks, 1 day pregnant, because it's dragged in court after court, and despite a 2-judge bench saying that go ahead, you can terminate your child.
No, Matt, I think, we are we need to have a little more compassion here. So I know that one side talks about compassion towards the pregnant mother. I would definitely call a mother, though you said that, we should probably say the pregnant woman. I would say the moment the fetus has taken heartbeats inside a woman, she turns into a mother. So we are talking about compassion from the mother's side, but at the same time, what about compassion from that little, the little one that's growing inside? It has a right to its life. It's begun feeling things. It's begun hearing things. It is really cruel to say stop its heart. It's beginning to, slowly feel its mom's touch. I think what we really need here is to give a good counseling and good education, the awareness to this mother and this father, and we need to give them a good support system to bring this child up. Why are we talking about stopping its heartbeat, or rather, for the lack of another word, killing this little baby inside? Why are we talking about it from such a cruel aspect? Well, this is India.
Because Deepa, as I bring in Tara into the conversation, we are talking about it is because, sadly, sometimes mental health issues cannot be solved with counseling. Clearly, this woman
Are you
is
sure about this case?
clear, and she's on medication. She's been on heavy medication. She finds herself in a place where she didn't know she was pregnant, and she's very clear she doesn't want this child.
Do we have a doctor's certificate that says that her mental issue is irreversible?
Sorry?
Have we given her enough support? Do we have a medical certificate that put it on record that this woman's medical or her health situation or her mental health is irreversible? Do we have we given her enough support? Why are we not exploring those aspects? And why are we so
Madam, okay, madam, all I'm saying is that this woman has tried to take her own life. One can understand there's something a lot more complex than a certificate. Having said that, I'll come back to that, right? I'll come back to this conversation. I want to just bring in Tara Krishnaswamy into, it's a debate, Tara, because, right now I'm sure our newsroom is divided. India is divided. The top court clearly is divided, and you have the Chief Justice of India who's made that very clear that, okay, you've got you've got a judge who's supporting the woman, you've got a judge, who's talking about rights, autonomy, but what about the child? So yes, there is a division in terms of how we view this case.
Well, there's a couple of things I'll say, Preeti. First of all, that this is a very unusual case. We are not talking about the normal course of law, right? There are so many extenuating circumstances here. The woman has known to be, suicidal. She is depressed. She's under heavy drugs. There was no way she could have known, a woman knows she's pregnant when, the menstrual cycle stops. And when that doesn't stop, you can't imagine you're pregnant, especially if you're feeding the baby. And, normal course of action will say that, in fact, the government of India, the various state governments, public health experts will tell you that a woman shouldn't have children within a year, 2 years. At least there should be a gap before she has a child. So even for the child herself and the woman's body, this is unbelievable amount of demand on the body. Not to mention her choice and, of admitting that she won't be able to do this. That is one. The second thing to recognize is, given all this transpired, after the 24 weeks or just after the 24 weeks, I wonder why this, and I don't know enough of the law to say this, but I don't know why the Supreme Court chose a 2-judge bench, because you can tie with a 2-judge bench. If you had had a 3-judge bench, at least one way or the other, the issue would have been settled. Now you're back with the tie, and this is not a good time to have a tie, because you're already past that 24-week, and every day, counts for the fetus, counts for the woman who's pregnant. So those two things. And finally, I'll say that the fetus is viable, and that is an issue to consider. The woman's body, when she gives birth and postpartum, both in terms of mental health but also physical health, is not necessarily equipped to go through this, and one doesn't know what is going to be the effect on this woman's body, right? Given the drugs, given the fact that it just went through childbirth less than a year ago or a year ago, and given her own mental and physical state. Given all that, you don't know if she is viable to do this, right?
Right.
And when she is very clear that this is something that she doesn't want, I think it behooves society to take it very seriously, and she, given also she's a mother, she is not trying to say, I don't want any children, oops, this is a mistake. This is much more than that. This is very unusual circumstances, and she has already been a mother, and she is suicidal, and she is saying this. I think it's what kind of this child being born into? What kind of situation is this child being born into? And that is part of the reason why the state is saying we'll give it up for adoption, because the state themselves are aware of the situation they're going to put the child into, given the mental and physical health of the mother, right? And the fact that the parents are saying this is not something that we anticipated and not something that we want. So I think there's a lot of reason to continue the pro-choice verdict here. And again, I don't know why they sat on a 2-judge bench and allowed the verdict to be tied at this crucial juncture.
Okay. The fact is, yes, she did come in, but she came in one day late on what is now that grey area where you can actually go ahead and legally terminate your pregnancy. I want to bring in Nalini back into this conversation. Nalini, because let's go back to what the 2-judge bench said before it was transferred to a larger 3-judge bench. You had Justice Nagarthana, who made it very clear that the fetus has no separate identity from mother. So it was a point of view which was made very clear by one of the judges on that bench.
Absolutely. And Preeti, let's not forget that it was just last year that the Supreme Court had given a landmark judgment on the issue of abortion, where it was none other than the Chief Justice of India, Dr. D.Y. Chandrachud himself, who had said that women should have a complete right over their bodily autonomy, especially when it comes to issues like abortion or termination of pregnancy. So keeping that in mind, one must think at this point, is that judgment really even being implemented anymore, considering that we're still debating this? But in my opinion, this is one of a kind case that has come to the court. And of course, it's not going to act as a precedent, because in each of these cases, the court will have to look at the facts of each case to decide what needs to be done. But at the same time, why it's one of a kind is because the Supreme Court itself is divided, and that's the entire reason why we are saying that there is a pro-choice versus pro-life debate that is ongoing right now. Because when 2 women judges of the Supreme Court cannot agree, after once already having passed an order, I think one of the guests asked why there was a 2-judge bench, because it was a same 2-judge bench that had earlier allowed the woman to get her pregnancy terminated, but after the medical board's opinion, they had to go back and recall that order and hear the case once again.
I want to quickly bring in for a comment each. Trisha, I want you back into the conversation, because would things have been different if this lady in question was not married, if she was single, or whether she was an abuse victim? Because as we speak, the Bombay High Court has allowed the termination of a 25-week pregnancy, because at that point the plea or the woman in question was sexually abused, and she's single. So are we getting morality into the ambit of what is supposed to be autonomy over your own body?
That is why I cited the case where a minor was allowed to terminate her pregnancy in the 26th week by the state of Maharashtra, right? Again, giving into consideration the same conditions, which is socioeconomic condition, which is the impact of the continuation of pregnancy on the minor's mental health. Also we must take into ambit that in India, as progressive and protective as our laws are when it comes to a woman's right to have an abortion and access to reproductive health care, We don't have education on sexual and reproductive health care rights. We're not teaching women concepts of birth control. We don't have easy access to condoms and birth control. So it's easy for the panelist here who's for right to life to say, why was she not using, why did she get pregnant? Why didn't she make better choices? Who is having these sort of conversations with a woman, let alone, any woman in a marriage or not, to educate them on their sexual and reproductive health care rights? I go back to what the Supreme Court said in Suchi Srivastava's case versus the state of Chandigarh, where they said that reproductive choices is a dimension of personal liberty as is covered and protected under Article 21. And it is important to recognize that reproductive choices can be exercised to procreate as well as to abstain from procreation. Right? It is always a woman's choice, right to privacy, to dignity, to body integrity. And our courts have reflected it. One can only hope in this case too, they show compassion towards the woman and her mental health, whereas a partner who are unequivocally saying do not want to carry forward this pregnancy.
I want to bring in Deepa Ishwar back because, would things have been different if the situation of this woman was different, if she was single, if she was abused? Deepa Ishwar, would you have had a different take then at 26 weeks of pregnancy that you have now because she's married and mentally sick?
So I think, the situation there would be that it was completely against her will that the entire, that she's ended up in that particular situation. Here we're talking about a married woman who is like 27 years of age. She's nursing her baby. And, she wasn't aware that she's pregnant. But, I have to say that somewhere the both of them are responsible for the situation. And finally, when they end up in a situation, I understand, I have my compassion for her, but I feel it's really sad that she ended up in such a situation. We needed to give her more education and awareness that, she realized it so late on. So we needed to give her more education. But again, this is not at all an abuse.
Deepa Ishwar, I want to,
this is between a married couple. So the situation entirely
But then,
changes.
but Deepa Ishwar,
I have one more thing to say. There was somebody on the panel who said that, into what environment is this baby being born into? The baby has the whole world to explore. The baby can be given to anyone who's ready to take up the baby. The baby has a whole
But
life
what if after she has this child, she decides to exercise what she did was to take her life again? She did try to take her life earlier. She's mentally sick, and maybe sometimes Deepa Ishwar, education is not the solution to somebody who's mentally sick. And I just want to bring
education, support, counseling.
Very quickly,
I would rather
bring it.
Also, another point, just one more point.
Please.
Here we're being overly compassionate towards the 27-year-old adult, but we have hardly any compassion.
Ma'am, we are being compassionate. Okay, no. We are hearing all sides of the story here, and therefore we have you on the show. It's not being compassionate about this particular woman. You're just looking at it from the perspective of having the right over your own body. Tara, 20-second concluding statement, then we're going to go into a quick break.
Yeah, Preeti, this baby can only exist within the body of the mother and can only be birthed by the woman. Okay, there is no existence for the baby outside. If it's a creature that you're conceiving inside a test tube in a lab environment, then random people can make the decision as to whether the baby should be born regardless. But now it is dependent on a person's body, and her body can be affected through the birth, after the birth, both her physical and mental health, and she's very clear she doesn't want it. So that is the base requirement for even deciding whether the pregnancy should continue or should be terminated. That's her choice. Then that's what needs to happen.
All right. Ladies, what we're going to do is I'm going to go into a quick break because there's no easy answer to it. I'm sure there are a lot of our viewers who are completely split on which side of the divide that they stand on. But, one needs to look at it from a perspective that, yes, if 25-week-old pregnancies can be terminated, legally so, by the court of law, it's known to have happened even 26 weeks that we've stated, that maybe if we treat her just as a married woman and put the onus on her, she's very clear she doesn't want the child. So maybe look at it from her perspective as well. A quick break. To stay with us. On the other side is Rahul Kanwar.
are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a B&P Group company.
First, let me say this with regard to 9/11. If you look at this in proportion to the size of Israel's population, this is the equivalent of 10 9/11s. That's how big and how devastating this attack has been. In a litany of brutality and inhumanity that, yes, brings to mind the worst of ISIS. Babies slaughtered, bodies desecrated, young people burned alive, women raped. The President's been very clear. I've been very clear. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel in its determination to defend its people, defend its country. We stand with Israel in its determination to do everything possible to ensure that what happened on Saturday never happens again. And in that determination, we are, of course, as you know, providing assistance as requested by Israel for its efforts. That will continue. And we're working closely with Congress to make sure that Israel has what it needs to do what it must.
Weather forecast now. Delhi, maximum 37 and minimum 22 degrees. Mumbai, maximum 33 and minimum 27 degrees. Kolkata, maximum 34 and minimum 25 degrees. Bangalore, maximum 28 and minimum 20 degrees. Chennai, maximum 31 and minimum 25 degrees. Hyderabad, maximum 32 and minimum 21 degrees.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a B&P Group company.
Presented by RP Sanjeev Goenka Group, Growing Legacies.
Co-presented by Century Laminates by Manish Malhotra, fashion for your furniture.
Co-presented by Macho Hind, Bade Aaram Se.
Co-powered by PolicyBazaar.com, Har family hogi insured. Co-powered by The Bold Look of Kohler. Kirloskar.
Good evening and welcome. You're watching the news track. I'm Rahul Kamal. What are the lessons India's intelligence agencies and the Indian state need to learn from Israel's intelligence failures, which led to Hamas's terrible attack on Israeli soil? How should Israel prepare now to ensure that such a thing never happens again? And what are the lessons intelligence agencies in India and the rest of the world need to learn to take on an enemy like the Hamas? That global conversation is my top focus on the news track.
Hamas Jugaad shocks the world. Other terror groups taking notes. Big new danger for India too. India aware of paraglider jihad. Beginning a brand new threat. What lessons from Israel's failure? The big focus on News Track.
Gaza may be under siege, but Hamas continues to rain fire on southern Israel. The big question that's still puzzling the world: why couldn't Israel anticipate an attack of this nature? Open source intelligence imagery and geolocation of Hamas videos shows the Hamas had set up mock Israeli settlements in Gaza just a few kilometers away from the Israeli border. This triggers a massive new challenge for the world. Ankit Kumar from the India Today Open Source Intelligence team with our lead story.
From artillery rockets to paragliders to drones to terrorist foot soldiers,